Thomas Chen walked through the grand ballroom of the Riverside Hotel with the confident stride that had become his trademark. At 45, the CEO of Horizon Innovations commanded respect wherever he went. Tonight's charity gala was no different. People whispered as he passed, some pointing discreetly at the man whose face had been on the cover of Business Today just last month. Mr. Chen, the governor would love a word, his assistant Raj whispered, gesturing toward a group of politicians by the champagne fountain. Thomas nodded and straightened his blue tie. 5 minutes, then remind me about the speech. The massive crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead as Thomas made his way across the marble floor. The room buzzed with conversation and laughter from the city's elite. Bankers in expensive suits, celebrities trying to boost their public image, and politicians seeking donations. It was the same crowd at every charity event, just different clothes and causes. Thomas had been doing this song and dance for years. Shake hands, smile for photos, write checks for good causes. His company had just gone public last month with stock prices that shocked even the most optimistic analysts. Everyone wanted a piece of his time tonight, but Thomas couldn't focus on any of the conversations around him. His mind kept drifting to the morning's board meeting and the merger talks that had hit a snag. He was mid-conversation with the governor when something caught his eye across the room. A flash of movement near the dessert table. 2 children, a boy and girl who looked about 9 or 10 years old, were sneaking extra chocolate-covered strawberries when they thought nobody was watching. The boy said something that made the girl laugh, and Thomas felt a strange jolt run through him. That smile. Those eyes. Thomas blinked hard, certain his mind was playing tricks. The boy had the exact same crooked smile that Thomas saw in the mirror every morning. And those eyes, the unusual gray-green color that had come from his mother's side of the family, even the way the boy tilted his head when he laughed was eerily familiar. "Excuse me," Thomas said, cutting the governor off mid-sentence. He began making his way across the crowded ballroom, weaving between guests in designer gowns and tuxedos. The girl turned slightly, reaching for another strawberry, and Thomas nearly stumbled. She had the same dimple in her left cheek that he did. The one his grandmother used to say was where an angel had touched him before he was born. Her hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, but the color was the exact unusual shade of dark brown with natural red highlights that ran in his family. Thomas felt his heart hammering against his ribs. This couldn't be a coincidence. 1 child, resembling him, might be explained away, but 2, with so many specific features that marked his family line. An older woman in a simple black dress, possibly their nanny or caretaker, stood nearby, checking her phone and occasionally glancing at the children. She hadn't noticed Thomas yet. He approached slowly, not wanting to frighten them. The boy was now balancing a spoon on his nose while the girl giggled. It was the exact same silly trick Thomas had perfected at their age to make his little brother laugh. "Hello there," Thomas said, his voice coming out hoarser than he intended. Both children looked up at him, and for a moment, nobody spoke. The boy's spoon clattered to the floor. "Hi," the girl said finally, her head tilting with curiosity. In a gesture so familiar it made Thomas's chest tighten. The boy stared openly, his mouth slightly agape. "You look like—" Before he could finish his sentence, the caretaker appeared at their side, her face flushing with what looked like panic when she saw Thomas. "Come along, children," she said sharply, taking each by the hand. "Your mother is looking for you." "But we were just—" the boy started to protest. "Now, Jason," she insisted, practically pulling them away. "Bye, mister," the girl called over her shoulder as they disappeared into the crowd. Thomas stood frozen in place, his mind racing. The boy's name was Jason. Something about the name tugged at his memory. Hadn't Lisa once mentioned she liked that name? Lisa Bennett, his ex-wife. The woman he'd loved deeply through college and the early years of his career. The woman who had walked away 10 years ago when his work hours became too demanding. Thomas felt dizzy as he did the math in his head. 10 years since the divorce. The children looked about 9. Could it be possible? "Mr. Chen? 5 minutes until your speech." Raj appeared at his elbow, tablet in hand. "I need you to find out something," Thomas said, his eyes still fixed on the spot where the children had disappeared. "There are 2 children here tonight. Twins, I think. A boy named Jason and a girl. Find out their last name." Raj looked confused but nodded. "Of course, sir. And your speech?" Thomas straightened his shoulders and took a deep breath. "The speech will have to wait. I need to follow those children." He moved through the crowd with purpose now, scanning faces and peering between groups of chatting guests. The grand ballroom was packed with nearly 500 people, making it difficult to spot the small figures of the children. Then he saw them, heading toward the exit with their caretaker firmly guiding them. Thomas quickened his pace, nearly knocking over a waiter carrying a tray of champagne flutes. "Wait," he called out. But his voice was lost in the noise of the gala. Just as he reached the edge of the room, the massive double doors swung closed behind them. Thomas pushed through, emerging into the quieter hotel corridor. He caught a glimpse of the small group turning a corner at the far end. His phone buzzed in his pocket, probably Raj reminding him about the speech he was now officially late for. The responsible CEO in him knew he should turn back. The charity was counting on his donation announcement. The board members in attendance would be confused by his absence. But something far more powerful pulled him forward. Those children had his eyes, his smile, his dimple, and he needed to know why. Thomas Chen, the man who planned every business move with careful precision, found himself running down a hotel corridor after 2 strange children who had his face, and possibly his, blood. Thomas didn't catch the children that night. By the time he reached the hotel entrance, they were already inside a black SUV pulling away from the curb. He stood there on the sidewalk, his breath forming small clouds in the cool evening air, watching the taillights disappear into traffic. "Mr. Chen, everyone's waiting for you inside." Raj had followed him out, concern written across his face. "Are you feeling all right?" Thomas turned to his assistant, his mind still reeling from what he'd seen. "Cancel my remaining appointments tomorrow," he said. "Personal emergency." Back in his penthouse apartment that night, Thomas couldn't sleep. He paced the length of his living room, the city lights twinkling through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those children, those eerily familiar faces that mirrored his own. By morning, dark circles had formed under his eyes, but his resolve was firm. He made 2 phone calls before even having his coffee. The first was to Rebecca, his company's head of legal, asking her to postpone the merger discussions. The second was to David Park, a former police detective who now ran a private investigation firm that Horizon Innovations sometimes hired for corporate security. "I need complete discretion on this," Thomas explained when Park arrived at his apartment. "This isn't company business, it's personal." Park, a stocky man with salt and pepper hair and watchful eyes, nodded as Thomas described the children from the charity gala. "Did you get any names?" he asked, jotting notes in a small leather-bound notebook. "Just the boy's first name, Jason. The caregiver was rushing them out when she saw me watching them." "That's not much to go on," Park admitted. "But the charity will have records of all attendees. I'll start there." Thomas pushed a folder across the glass coffee table. "This is everything I can remember. What they were wearing, what time I saw them, which exit they used, and this." He hesitated, then slid over a photograph of himself as a child. "This is me at around their age." Park raised his eyebrows as he studied the old photograph. "I see why you're curious," he said quietly. "There's one more thing." Thomas took a deep breath. "My ex-wife's last name is Bennett, Lisa Bennett. We've been divorced for almost 10 years now." Park looked up sharply. "And you think these might be her children?" "The timing would be..." Thomas ran a hand through his hair. "Complicated, but possible." Over the next week, Thomas went through the motions at work, his mind constantly wandering to the investigation. The merger his team had been working on for months suddenly seemed trivial. His executive team noticed the change, the distant look in his eyes during meetings, how he kept checking his phone. "You've built this company from nothing," his CFO reminded him, after a particularly distracted strategy session. "Whatever's going on, don't let it all fall apart now," Thomas nodded, knowing he was right. That afternoon, he forced himself to focus on the mountain of work that had piled up. He was deep in spreadsheets when his private line rang. "I found them," Park said without preamble. Thomas's heart skipped a beat. "Tell me." "Twins. Jason and Lily Bennett, 9 years old, enrolled at Westlake Academy, one of the most expensive private schools in the city." Park paused. "Their mother is Lisa Bennett, never remarried. She runs an art gallery downtown." Thomas closed his eyes, a storm of emotions washing over him. "Lisa, after all these years." "There's more," Park continued. "I ran their birth certificates. They were born exactly 8 months after your divorce was finalized." Thomas felt as if the air had been sucked from the room. 8 months after the divorce. Which meant she was pregnant when we signed the papers, he whispered. "Looks that way," Park agreed. "I took the liberty of getting their school photos from the Academy's yearbook." An hour later, Thomas sat at his kitchen table staring at the images Park had sent to his tablet. There was no doubt. The same gray-green eyes, the same dimple. Even their smiles, Lily's wide and open, Jason's slightly crooked just like his. His children. He had children he'd never known about. Questions raced through his mind like runaway trains. Why hadn't Lisa told him? She wasn't the type to keep such a secret out of spite. Their divorce had been painful but respectful. They'd simply grown apart as his company demanded more of his time, and her art career was taking off. They'd agreed they wanted different things in life. At least that's what he'd thought. Thomas opened a drawer and pulled out a small wooden box he rarely looked at anymore. Inside were mementos from his relationship with Lisa, concert tickets, a dried flower from their first date, photos from happier times. At the bottom was their wedding photo. He ran his finger over Lisa's smiling face. She'd been so beautiful, so full of life and dreams. Had one of those dreams been to raise their children without him? The next morning, Thomas canceled all his meetings despite his CFO's protests. He dressed carefully in a casual sweater and jeans rather than his usual suit. He didn't want to intimidate. He didn't want to appear as the powerful CEO coming to make demands. He just wanted answers. The private investigator had confirmed that Lisa would be at her gallery today, a renovated warehouse in the arts district that showcased up-and-coming painters and sculptors. Thomas remembered how passionate she'd been about supporting new artists, how she could talk for hours about brush techniques and color theory while he listened, not always understanding, but loving her enthusiasm. As his driver pulled up to the curb outside the gallery, Thomas spotted the sign, Bennett Contemporary Arts. His ex-wife had built something impressive here, just as he had with his company. A life completely separate from him, a life that apparently included their children. He stepped out of the car, his heart pounding like he was about to give a speech to 1,000 investors rather than face one woman from his past. "I'll wait here, sir," his driver said. Thomas nodded, took a deep breath of the cool morning air, and walked toward the gallery entrance. Through the large windows, he could see someone moving inside, arranging lighting on a large canvas. Even from a distance, he recognized Lisa's graceful movements. It was time to discover the truth. Thomas stood outside the gallery for several minutes, gathering his courage. Through the glass, he could see Lisa adjusting the lighting on a large, abstract painting. Her dark hair was shorter now, falling just below her shoulders instead of down her back like when they were married. She wore simple black pants and a deep blue blouse, still the same elegant style he remembered. The bell above the door chimed softly as he entered. Lisa didn't turn right away, focused on the painting. "We open at 10, but you're welcome to. Look around while I finish setting up," she called over her shoulder. "Hello, Lisa." She froze at the sound of his voice. When she turned, her face went pale as if she'd seen a ghost. For a moment, neither of them spoke. 10 years of silence hung between them like an invisible wall. "Thomas," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper, "what are you doing here?" He took a few steps forward, noticing how she tensed with each step. "I think you know why I'm here." Lisa's hand went to her throat, an old nervous habit he remembered well. "How did you find out?" "I saw them," Thomas said, his voice breaking, slightly. "At the charity gala last week, they looked just like me, Lisa." She closed her eyes briefly as if accepting that a moment she'd long dreaded had finally arrived. When she opened them again, there was a mix of fear and resignation in her gaze. "You've seen them," she said quietly. "So what happens now? You storm into our lives with lawyers?" "Lawyers?" Thomas shook his head, confused. "I just want to understand. Why didn't you tell me I had children? We have children together, Lisa." She motioned toward her small office at the back of the gallery. "We shouldn't have this conversation on the gallery floor. I open in 30 minutes. The office was neat, but cramped, with art books stacked on, every surface and framed photos on the desk. Thomas's eyes immediately went to a picture of the twins at what looked like a birthday party, chocolate cake smeared on their smiling faces. "They're beautiful," he said softly. Lisa sat behind her desk, creating a barrier between them. "Yes, they are. How could you keep this from me?" The question came out more wounded than angry. Lisa's eyes flashed. "Keep this from you?" "I tried to tell you, Thomas, multiple times." This wasn't the response he expected. "What are you talking about? We haven't spoken since the divorce." "Exactly." She pulled open a drawer and took out a small stack of envelopes, pushing them across the desk. These came back unopened. "Return to sender. Your assistant made it very clear you wanted a clean break." Thomas stared at the envelopes in confusion. They were addressed to his office in his ex-wife's familiar handwriting, each one marked personal and confidential, and each one with a bright return to sender stamp across the front. "I never saw these," he said, picking one up. "My assistant would never—" "Your assistant Karen? She called me herself." Lisa's voice was tight with old pain. "Said you were focused on taking the company public and didn't need complications from the past distracting you." The blood drained from Thomas's face. Karen had been his assistant during those early years when he was working 18-hour days, determined to build his company into something remarkable. She'd been fiercely protective, managing his schedule and his life with military precision. But this? Karen had no right, he whispered. "I fired her 3 years ago when I discovered she'd been making other decisions without consulting me." Lisa's expression softened slightly. "I tried calling too, but you changed your number." The company issued new secure phones to all executives. Thomas ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "Lisa, I swear if I had known—" "Would it have made a difference?" she challenged. "You made your choice very clear when you signed those divorce papers, Thomas. You chose your company over everything else." Her words stung because there was truth in them. He had been obsessed with his work, convinced that he could have it all once the company was established. By the time he realized what he'd lost, Lisa was gone. "I made mistakes," he admitted. "Big ones. But I never would have chosen to abandon my own children, never." Something in his voice must have reached her because the hard line of her shoulders relaxed slightly. "When I found out I was pregnant, it was 2 weeks after the divorce was final," she explained. "I was shocked. We'd been careful, but life finds a way." Thomas finished, remembering their favorite line from an old movie they'd watched together countless times. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Yes. And suddenly, I was facing being a single mother to twins. And when I didn't respond to your letters, I took it as confirmation that I'd made the right choice in not fighting harder to reach you." She gestured to the photos on her desk. "I built a good life for us. The gallery is doing well. The kids are happy and healthy." Thomas picked up one of the photos. The twins building a snowman, their cheeks red with cold but their smiles wide and joyful. "Jason and Lily," he said, testing their names. "I've missed 9 years of their lives." Lisa watched him carefully. "What exactly do you want, Thomas?" It was the million-dollar question. What did he want? To barge into their lives and demand partial custody? To get to know the children he'd never known existed? To understand how Lisa had managed all these years on her own? "I want," he began, then paused. What he wanted most was to turn back time, to open those letters when they arrived, to be there for Lisa when she discovered she was pregnant, to hold his children when they were born. But that was impossible. I want the chance to know them. If they want to know me, Lisa's eyes filled with tears. They've asked about you, children always do. I never said anything bad, just that you were busy building your company. Thomas felt a lump form in his throat. What did you tell them about why I wasn't around? Just that sometimes grown-ups make complicated choices. She wiped away a tear. I didn't want them to think they weren't wanted. But they are, Thomas said fiercely. Even though I didn't know they existed, they are so wanted, Lisa. The bell above the gallery door chimed, announcing a customer. Lisa checked her watch and stood up. I need to open the gallery, she said, and you need time to think about what this really means. Having children isn't like a merger or acquisition, Thomas. You can't just decide you want in and then back away when it gets complicated. I know that. Do you? Her gaze was piercing. Because those two little people out there, they have my heart walking around outside my body. I won't let them be hurt. Thomas nodded, understanding the warning in her words. When can I see them? Lisa hesitated. Let me talk to them first. Prepare them. This weekend maybe I'll call you. My number is the same, he said, then realized she wouldn't know that. He took out a business card and wrote his personal cell on the back. Anytime. As he turned to leave, Lisa called after him. Thomas, there's something else you should know. Something about my father. Thomas paused at the door. Your father? What about him? It's complicated, she said, glancing at the customer now browsing the paintings. But he's part of this story too. Come back tomorrow morning before opening. There's more you need to hear. Thomas nodded, his mind whirling with questions as he stepped back out into the sunlight. He had found his children, but it seemed the mystery was far from solved. Thomas barely slept that night. His mind kept replaying the conversation with Lisa, wondering what she meant about her father being part of the story. Robert Bennett had never approved of Thomas. He'd made that clear from the beginning. A self-made businessman with no family connections wasn't good enough for his only daughter. The next morning, Thomas arrived at the gallery 30 minutes before opening time. Lisa was already there, 2 coffee cups on her desk. She'd remembered he liked it black. You look tired, she said, gesturing for him to sit. Lots to think about. Thomas took the coffee gratefully. You mentioned your father yesterday. Lisa nodded, her face serious. What I'm about to tell you might be hard to believe. After this week, I'm ready to believe just about anything. Lisa opened her laptop and turned it to face him. 6 months ago, my father had a stroke. While he was in the hospital, I went to his house to get some things he needed. I found this in his study safe. On the screen was a folder labeled Thomas Chen Correspondence. I didn't understand at first, Lisa continued, but inside were dozens of emails, from you to me. Messages I never received. Thomas leaned forward, stunned. What? And this. She pressed play on a video file. The video showed Lisa's father in his home office, looking much older than Thomas remembered. His once commanding presence diminished by illness. He spoke directly, to the camera. Lisa, if you're watching this, something has happened to me. There are things I need to confess. His voice was raspy but determined. 10 years ago, I did something unforgivable. I interfered in your marriage. Thomas watched in disbelief as Robert Bennett detailed how he had intercepted Thomas's emails, redirecting them to an account he controlled. How he had returned letters without Lisa's knowledge. How he had even paid Thomas's assistant Karen for information and to keep Lisa's attempts at contact from reaching Thomas. He was obsessed with protecting me, Lisa said quietly as the video ended. In his mind, you abandoned me for your career, and he was making sure you couldn't hurt me again. Thomas felt a surge of anger. He had no right. No, he didn't. Lisa agreed. What he did was wrong, but he was dying when he made this confession. The doctor gave him months to live. He wanted to make things right before the end. Is he? He's in hospice care now. The stroke left him partially paralyzed, and there were complications. Her voice softened. Thomas, there's more. She clicked to another video. This time it showed security footage from the charity gala, the exact moment when Thomas first spotted the twins. My father arranged for the children to be there that night, Lisa explained. He hired a friend's daughter to take them, positioned them where you would see them. It wasn't a coincidence. Thomas stared at the screen in shock. Why would he do that? Guilt, I think. He realized what he'd stolen from all of us, you, me, the children. Lisa closed the laptop. He's been asking to see you. See me? After what he did? He wants to give you something. He wouldn't tell me what it is, just that he needs to do it in person. Lisa's eyes were pleading. I know it's a lot to ask. Thomas sat back trying to process everything. For 10 years he'd believed Lisa had simply moved on, while she thought he'd rejected her attempts to tell him about their children. All because of her father's interference. I'll see him, Thomas said, finally. Not for his sake, but for all of us, we deserve the full truth. That afternoon, they drove together to the hospice facility in the hills outside the city. The awkward silence in the car was broken only when Lisa pointed out places the twins liked, their favorite ice cream shop, the park where Lily first learned to ride a bike, the library where Jason spent hours reading about dinosaurs. They're good kids, she said. Smart, kind. Lily is artistic like me. Jason is more like you, always figuring out how things work. Thomas soaked in every detail, trying to build a picture of the children he'd never known. The hospice was a peaceful place with large windows overlooking gardens. Robert Bennett's room was at the end of a quiet hallway. The once powerful man now looked frail in his hospital bed, tubes and monitors surrounding him. His eyes, however, were alert and fixed on Thomas the moment he entered. You came, Robert said, his voice weaker than in the video. Not for you, Thomas replied coldly. The old man nodded. Fair enough. With shaking hands, he pointed to a box on the bedside table. Lisa, would you give us a moment? She hesitated, then nodded. I'll be right outside. When the door closed, Robert spoke again. That box contains 10 years of your life that I stole. Thomas opened it. Inside were dozens of envelopes. Birthday, cards Thomas had sent that were never delivered, letters he'd written during lonely business trips, even small gifts he'd mailed after the divorce, hoping to repair their friendship. You kept everything, Thomas said, his voice tight. I was wrong, Robert admitted. I thought I was protecting my daughter from a man who would hurt her like her mother hurt me. Her mother left me for her career when Lisa was just a baby. The old man's eyes were watery. History repeating itself, that's all I could see. Thomas picked up a small blue jewelry box from the collection. He remembered buying the sapphire earrings for what would have been their anniversary. A peace offering Lisa never received. You didn't just keep us apart, Thomas said. You kept my children from me. Yes. No excuses, just acknowledgement. When Lisa told me she was pregnant, I convinced her that reaching out again would only bring more pain, that your silence meant rejection. And now? Why the change of heart? Robert gestured weakly toward the window. Dying has a way of clarifying things. I realized I'd become the villain in my own daughter's story. Those children deserve to know, their father. Thomas wanted to stay angry, but the man before him was already facing the ultimate judgment. Does Lisa know everything that's in here? No. I wanted you to see it first. To know that she never rejected you. Robert's breathing became labored. She loved you. Maybe still does, though she'd never admit it. A nurse appeared at the door, concerned about Robert's elevated heart rate. As she adjusted his medication, Thomas gathered the box of memories. I can't forgive you, he told Robert quietly. Not yet, but I'll try to fix what you broke. In the hallway, Lisa looked up anxiously. What did he give you? Thomas opened the box slightly, showing her the contents. Her hand went to her mouth. All, this time, she whispered. I thought you didn't care enough to answer. And I thought you didn't care enough to tell me about our children. he replied. Something shifted between them. A decade of misunderstandings suddenly cleared away, leaving raw truth in its place. What happens now? Lisa asked. Thomas looked at the box in his arms. 10 years of attempts to reach the woman he had once loved, the woman who had given birth to his children without him knowing. Now, he said, we figure out how to tell Jason and Lily that their father wants to meet them, and that he never chose to be away from them. Lisa nodded, tears in her eyes. They're going to have a lot of questions. I know, Thomas said, and for the first time in 10 years, we have the real answers. As they walked out of the hospice into the fading afternoon light, Thomas felt like he was waking from a long dream. Ahead lay an uncertain future, but also the possibility of knowing his children, of rebuilding something that had been stolen from all of them. I'm scared, Lisa admitted as they reached the car. Me too, Thomas said. But I think we owe it to Jason and Lily to try. The weekend arrived with a mix of sunshine and clouds, fitting weather for the emotional storm Thomas was walking into. He stood in front of his closet for nearly an hour that morning, changing outfits 3 times. What does a father wear? To meet his children for the first time, he finally settled on jeans and a blue button-down shirt. Casual enough not to intimidate, but still put together. No tie, no expensive watch. Just a man, not a CEO, going to meet his kids. You're overthinking this, he told his reflection. But how could he not? These children had lived 9 years without him. What if they hated him? What if they wanted nothing to do with him? Lisa had suggested a park near their home for the meeting. Neutral ground, she'd explained. Somewhere they feel comfortable, but not so comfortable they can just run to their rooms if it gets overwhelming. Thomas arrived 20 minutes early, his stomach in knots. He sat on a bench near the playground, watching other families. Fathers pushing daughters on swings, mothers helping sons climb jungle gyms. Normal, everyday interactions he'd missed thousands of times over. His phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. On our way. Jason is excited. Lily is nervous. Just be yourself. Just be yourself. Such simple advice, yet Thomas wasn't sure who himself was anymore. The driven CEO, the ex-husband, the newly discovered father. All of these roles seemed to clash inside him. He spotted them before they saw him. Lisa walking hand in hand with the twins along the park path. Jason was talking animatedly, using his free hand to gesture. Lily was quieter, staying close to her mother's side. Both kids wore jeans, his son in a dinosaur t-shirt, his daughter in a purple sweater. Thomas stood, his legs suddenly unsteady. Lisa saw him and gave an encouraging nod. She leaned down and said something to the children, then pointed in his direction. Jason looked up first. Their eyes met across the distance, and Thomas felt a jolt of recognition that went beyond physical resemblance. This was his son, his actual son. The boy tugged free from his mother and ran ahead, stopping a few feet from Thomas. Up close, the resemblance was even more striking. Are you really my dad? Jason asked, no preamble, just direct curiosity. Thomas nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. How come you never visited before? I didn't know about you, Thomas said honestly. If I had, I would have been here every day. Jason considered this, head tilted in the exact same way Thomas did when evaluating a business proposal. Mom said you and Grandpa had a big misunderstanding. That's true. Like when I thought Lily took my action figure but really the dog hid it under the couch? Thomas smiled, grateful for the simple comparison. Kind of like that, but bigger. Then Lisa and Lily had caught up. The girl stayed half hidden behind her mother, studying Thomas with cautious eyes. Hi, Lily, Thomas said softly. I like your sweater. Purple was my mom's favorite color too. You had a mom? She asked, her voice small but curious. The innocent question broke something open in Thomas's heart. Everyone has a mom. Mine was wonderful. She would have loved to meet you. Where is she now? She died when I was in college, but she loved to paint just like your mom. This seemed to interest Lily. She stepped slightly out from behind Lisa. I paint too. Mom says I'm good. I bet you are, Thomas said. Maybe you could show me sometime? She nodded, still shy but no longer hiding. Lisa suggested they walk to the duck pond. As they strolled, Jason peppered Thomas with questions. Did he like dinosaurs? Yes. Could he drive a sports car? Yes. Did he know how to build robots? Sort of. Lily stayed quiet, but moved gradually, closer, until she was walking between Thomas and Lisa instead of clinging to her mother's side. At the pond, they sat on a bench watching the ducks while eating ice cream cones from a nearby vendor. Thomas learned that Jason played soccer and built elaborate Lego structures. Lily took ballet lessons and loved reading stories about magical worlds. Do you live in a mansion? Jason asked, chocolate ice cream smeared on his chin. Not exactly. I have an apartment downtown. It's pretty big, but not a mansion. Does it have a pool? Lily asked, surprising everyone with her sudden interest. The building does on the roof, Thomas answered, with a view of the whole city. Cool, both kids said together, then looked at each other and giggled. By the time the ice cream was finished, the initial awkwardness had faded, not completely gone, but softened around the edges. These weren't just any children anymore. They were his, with his mannerisms and expressions mixed with Lisa's gentleness. We should probably head back, Lisa said eventually. You two have homework to finish. Both children groaned, another familiar sound that made Thomas smile. As they walked back toward the park entrance, Lily fell into step beside him. Mom showed us your picture this morning, she said quietly. The old one from when you were married. Did she? Lily nodded. You looked happy. We were, Thomas said, glancing at Lisa walking ahead with Jason. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, big ones. Like Grandpa. Thomas hesitated, not wanting to speak badly of their grandfather. Your grandpa thought he was protecting your mom, but yes, he made mistakes too. They reached Lisa's car too quickly. Thomas wasn't ready for the day to end, but he knew pushing for too much too soon would be a mistake. Can we see you again? Jason asked as Lisa helped him with his seatbelt. I'd like that very much, Thomas answered, looking to Lisa for approval. She nodded. How about dinner at our house next weekend? You can see where we live. I'll bring dessert, Thomas offered. Chocolate cake, Jason called from inside the car. With strawberries on top, Lily added softly. As Lisa closed the car doors, she stepped close to Thomas. That went better than I expected. They're amazing, Lisa. You've done an incredible job with them. They're half you, you know. Jason has your logical mind. Lily has your quiet determination. Before he could respond, she reached into her purse and handed him a small flash drive. I put together some videos and photos from over the years. First steps, birthdays, school plays. It's not the same as being there, but... Thomas took it, speechless with gratitude. 9 years of memories condensed into digital files. It wasn't enough, nothing could replace actually being there, but it was a start. Thank you, he managed to say. For today. For them. Lisa's eyes were bright with unshed tears. They deserve to know you, Thomas, and you deserve to know them. As she drove away, the twins waving from the back window, Thomas felt something shift inside him. The anger at Robert Bennett was still there, but diminished now. In its place was something bigger, a sense of possibility, of family. That night he sat in his living room watching videos of his children growing up. First birthday parties, wobbly first steps, preschool graduation. With each new video, his heart broke and healed simultaneously. So much lost time, yet so much potential ahead. The last video was different. Shot just that morning, Lisa behind the camera. Tell your dad something about yourself, her voice prompted off screen. Jason jumped in front of the camera first. I'm really good at math, and I want to build rockets someday. Lily's turn came next, her shy smile now familiar to Thomas. I like painting clouds and reading stories. And she hesitated, then added, I'm glad you're not just a picture anymore. Thomas replayed those words again and again as he looked out at the city lights. After years of building a company, he was now faced with a much more important project: building relationships with his children. It wouldn't be easy. There would be awkward moments, difficult questions, and probably some tears along the way. But as he looked at the small family photo Lisa had given him, Jason and Lily laughing on a beach somewhere, Thomas knew with absolute certainty that it would be worth every moment. Some ties, it seemed, could never truly be broken. And some families, however unconventional, were meant to find their way back to each other